Well, let's start with Britain, the tunnel of despair in which my own country is trapped, and the attempted mass murder of at least 10 people on a British train last evening, which was diverted by an heroic train driver to Huntingdon. And no one, mercifully, has yet lost their lives, although 9 people have life-threatening injuries. It turned out that it was not a terrorist attack. It was not a Muslim, and nobody shouted Allahu Akbar whilst the stabbing was continuing. I mentioned that because, of course, social media was ablaze, and utterly irresponsible shills like Elon Musk, and also in Russia, a man called Dmitriev, a man who should know better, sought to exploit the incident to inflame racial and religious tensions in the United Kingdom. It wasn't a Muslim, and it wasn't 2 men. Therefore, it wasn't a conspiracy. It was one black British man who is now under arrest. We await details of just exactly what was going on that train. We thank God for the deliverance of the passengers and staff, and we salute the railway workers once again, who in their denuded numbers still managed to get their staff and their passengers home alive, if not bloodied. The truth is, we don't know what the motive of this individual was, but we do know that such things are happening even in rural England all the time. A white man called Corrigan, presumably of Irish extraction, on the same day was found guilty of murdering a Saudi national on a train in Cambridge. You don't need a black skin to be a maniac. You don't need a black skin or a Muslim faith to go rampaging with knives and sharp swords. It's happening in Britain all the time, just like the grooming of little girls and boys for the degraded, depraved, degenerate tastes of men and even sometimes women. You don't have to be a Catholic priest. You don't have to be a Muslim devotee. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be a human being living in this late capitalism in a country as down at heel as Great Britain is. I know it's down at heel because I'm in Moscow. And I know it's filthy dirty because I'm in Moscow. I know it's dangerous because I'm in Moscow, as earlier I was in Minsk, where no cigarette butt can be detected on the street, never mind anything more foul, where anyone can walk at any time of the night without fearing for their personal safety, where people can board trains that are filled with staff. I took the overnight train from Minsk to Moscow. There must have been 100 staff on the train, 100, with beautiful uniforms, treated with respect, treated as if they were almost your friend, even though their job was to take your ticket. Their job was to make sure that you had settled in with all that you needed in the sleeping car compartments. I mention that because I used to think there weren't enough police officers in Britain. I used to cry it here on the Mother of All talk shows. But now I know there are actually plenty of police officers in Britain. The problem is what they're deployed to do. There are more police officers raiding people's homes for tweets that they sent. There are more police officers arresting 93-year-old retired vicars for holding placards. There are more police officers detaining people like me and Gayatri for attending a World Youth Festival in Russia. There are plenty of police officers for that. no less than 10 members of the anti-terrorist police, armed police, held Gayatri for 5 hours, held me for 4 hours, when there are real terrorists out there going unmolested, hatching their fiendish plots to cause harm, real acts of hostility, against the British people, against our beloved country. And they're going unmolested because the police are too busy molesting 93-year-old vicars, blind and disabled men, pensioners, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, for holding placards in public squares. The police are too busy hunting dissidents, opposition figures like me, so that I'm now on the road virtually permanently, making this show from foreign lands with no one causing me a moment's difficulty, because they respect the fact that I am speaking my mind. It might not be your mind. It's definitely not Keir Starmer's mind. It's not the apparatus that he uses to maintain illegitimate power. That's fine. But Britain is or was a free country. And we are free to speak our minds. And if we cannot speak it within British shores, we will find other shores from which to speak it. This foul act on the train in London last night did not result so far in any fatality. But the fatalities in the Sudan are so stark that even from space you can see the blood stain. Thousands of people, thousands of them, have been massacred by a rebel group in Sudan, which has the support, albeit by proxy, of Western countries and Israel. The slaughter is unimaginable. I've watched the videos, so you don't have to. You don't have to watch the man begging as he was run over by a truck. You don't have to watch the mother who, with her 3 children, begging for her lives before they took them. You don't have to watch the systematic rape called for by RSF, that's the name of the organization, RSF rebels in Sudan. You don't have to watch the woman commander giving the places that they're going next and telling the fighters that they had to take the girls there and cleanse their bloodlines, rape them, impregnate them. Openly called for, on camera, their own cameras, openly posted by themselves on TikTok and other social media platforms. This bestiality has been going on for some years now in Sudan. But the fact that it is supported to the nth degree by vast sums of money, vast amounts of weaponry and logistics, by close allies, the closest possible allies of the United States of America, makes a mockery of the latest pronunciamento later in the week by Donald Trump, who has not said a word about the mass slaughter in Sudan, that he's going in all guns blazing into Nigeria. Now, Donald is not, how shall I put it, the best read person on the planet. I know that he's sharp, I know that he's a shark in business, but he doesn't know much about the world. He doesn't know much about geography. He doesn't know much about history. He doesn't know much about demography. So this next lesson is for him. There are 250 million people in Nigeria. Half of them are Christians and half of them are Muslims. There is an ISIS, Al-Qaeda terrorist offshoot called Boko Haram, which has been slaughtering Muslims and Christians for decades. in Nigeria. And no American president has done jack about it or even spoken about it until now. Makes you wonder what it was exactly that woke up Donald Trump to the situation in Nigeria. This Boko Haram come out of the same stable as the ISIS and Al-Qaeda offshoot, which has just been received with all honors in the White House. And you know to whom and to what I refer. Western countries spent an entire decade and more assisting ISIS and Al-Qaeda to take over Syria, where they engaged in exactly the same kind of slaughter and bloodletting on their own video cameras as we've seen this week in Sudan. So what exactly is the difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Nigeria, who have to be all guns blazing, destroyed viciously, he said, by Donald Trump, and the Al-Qaeda and ISIS that were received in the White House just a couple of weeks ago? What's the difference between one ISIS and another ISIS? The answer, of course, is entirely opportunistic. We supported ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria, but they want us to believe that the Western countries oppose it in Nigeria. Now, Russia is fighting ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Burkina Faso, in Mali, where ISIS and Al-Qaeda are on the march and on their advance. Donald Trump isn't offering to help there. He's offering to help Nigeria by invading a country of 250 million people. Well, there's a corrupt old president there called Tinubu, who was deported actually from the United States for drug offenses a few decades ago. That's why they won't release his police record. He's one of their men. But if Tinubu welcomes American soldiers into Nigeria, degrading the very idea of Nigerian sovereignty, Tinubu will not be there for long. The Nigerian people, Christian and Muslim, are a proud African people. And Donald Trump coming in like John Wayne, all guns blazing, is not only not going to solve the Boko Haram problem, it's going to multiply many other problems. Problems of separatism, of secession, of sectarianism, of religious strife. All of these things will erupt in Nigeria, and a volcano will be lit in the heart of Africa, which will take some extinguishing, as will indeed the purported imminent invasion of Venezuela. I know I spoke about this just the other night, but I must return to it, because there are now 25,000 American soldiers, sailors, and Marines in an entire battle group, including aircraft carriers, off the coast of Venezuela. Venezuela is receiving hourly, not daily, hourly, massive transport airplanes from both Russia and China. Russia has a strategic partnership with Venezuela. It is a military ally of Venezuela. China has trillions of investments in Venezuelan oil and gas production. If Donald Trump thinks that 25,000 soldiers, sailors, and Marines is going to be enough to take over the vast country of Venezuela, almost a subcontinent in itself, then he's even more ignorant than I had supposed him to be. I don't know if he's going to do it. I don't know if it's all a bluff. But according to the American media, an attempt to overthrow the government of Venezuela and an invasion, land invasion. They've already invaded the seas of Venezuela. A land invasion of Venezuela is imminent. Now, I wasn't in the Vietnam War, Mr. President, and of course, famously, neither were you. I was too young. You were too sick. Your bone spurs. What are bone spurs anyway? They certainly didn't stop you playing golf and disco dancing right up until this minute to the strains of YMCA, but they were serious enough. 4 times for you to avoid the draft to Vietnam. But I do know a lot about the Vietnam War, almost certainly more than you do, President Trump. I loved the Vietnamese people long before I ever knew that I would have children of my own that could easily be taken to be Vietnamese. I have crawled in the tunnels in Vietnam where the resistance, the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army crawled on their bellies only to pop up and take a terrific toll on American soldiers in the Vietnam War. 58,000 American soldiers died in the Vietnam War. Hundreds of thousands of American military personnel were maimed, wounded, many of them for the rest of their lives in the Vietnam War. Millions were psychologically destroyed, their lives unalterably changed by the experience, the horrific experience of the Vietnam War. Mr. President, I'm here to tell you, if you invade Venezuela, you are invading a Latin American Vietnam. It's all coming up on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.